All right, let's talk a little bit about the T pronunciation and how it works in some special cases. I recently got a comment from one of you guys, Haiyan. Yeah, that's right. And in this comment, this person was asking for some clarification about the pronunciation of T in some words or combinations, like linking. So I have that here on my phone, and let's go through these. I wanted to make this sort of a special short lesson because the T can be very complicated, and I think that this would help a lot of people if I actually go through this and explain what's going on. So number one, we have lilt a song. Now, if you don't know what lilt means, which you probably don't, it's a very uncommon word. Don't worry, you can look it up, but we're focused on the pronunciation here. So the question is the T in that a flapped D? Well, we know that next we have a vowel, and usually what happens if a T connects over to a vowel, it becomes a flapped D in American English, right? So do I say lil the song, lil that? It's hard to do that. It's really hard to do that because if I say lil the song, it's kind of weird because this particular word, it's lilt. So we have the full L or light L plus an L-colored second vowel I, so ill. And then we have that T. And it might be because this word is kind of uncommon, but if I try to change it into a D, it's kind of weird. What we'd probably do in this case, this is kind of a special case, we'd just say lilt a song, lilt, and do like a stop T, or maybe lilt a song, you can push out the T. We'd more likely stop it, but possible. And so you can say lilta. Let's look at the next case, which is lilt the song. And this is actually a little different because now we have a TH after it. And what happens when we have a T or a D that goes into a TH? Well, we're actually going to do something special. So the question is the T dropped or is it unreleased? And how I would say this, lilt the song, lilt the song. So I'd probably still do a stop in between the two, but I'm not going into the T position. I'm going into the dental T position, which is a variation of the TH. Don't get that confused. I've talked about that in a couple places. You can watch the main TH lesson if you haven't heard about that. But instead of saying lilt the, I'm saying lilt the. Lilt the. And it's actually not a dental T, it's a dental D. Sorry, dental D, because it's a voiced TH, so it's a dental D. That T, still technically it's stopping. If you clearly enunciate, you can say lilt the. That's fine, but most likely we're going to do this sort of special combination where we would still probably stop the T here, but we're actually going into that dental D position instead of the T position and then releasing that dental D TH. Next, we have a question, is it a ball? Is it a ball? And then, yes, it is. No, it isn't. Okay, so the question isn't about the question here, right? Is it a ball? The T there would flap. It becomes a flap D like normal. Is it a ball? But then in the answers, positive answer, yes, it is. Okay, the Haiyan's question here is this T unreleased because is here is stressed? And one thing that you guys have to know, I don't know what other teachers teach you. I've heard some crazy things that you guys have been taught. But one thing you guys have to know is that the stress, it can have an effect on the sounds and on the linking, but the stress is generally disconnected from linking and sounds. That's like a different aspect of pronunciation. So it doesn't really matter if is stressed or not in this case. We're going to say it is. It is. If is not stressed, then it would be it is. It is. If is stressed, it's going to be it is. It is. We still make that same connection. It's just we'll go louder on is or not louder on is if it's stressed or not. When we say no, it isn't, okay, notice that. No, it isn't, okay? And the question here is it an unreleased T in it because isn't here is stressed? Now, first thing, so isn't is stressed on the first syllable, but again, I'm flapping that D. Now remember, American English pronunciation is a range. Okay, it's a range and flow. You have nice, clear, enunciated speech or really emphasized speech that's really slow, which we use as a tool, not as the normal way to speak. Okay, most teachers say be over here. I don't want you to do that. That's going to be unnatural. It's going to make you harder to understand sometimes. The way natives speak, sometimes we'll go over here to clearly enunciated. So it is possible, it's always possible, to say yes, it is, or no, it isn't. Right? Or we could even stop the T and say, yes, it is, or no, it isn't. Because these are various ways that the T could be pronounced. Most likely we're just going to flap it and connect because that's what we would most likely want to do here to keep that flowing really well in American English. But these other options might happen. Okay? They might happen. Especially if we're speaking more slowly or we're emphasizing the word with the T. So if I say, yes, it is, okay, I can get a little T there, that's fine. It is unreleased T in isn't due to the cluster NT. Okay, so this unreleased T, I don't call it the unreleased T because I think that that can be misleading and not always like the most accurate, depending on what we're talking about. But here I would call this a stop T. Now again, the full pronunciation is always possible. It might happen. So a T could come out, or if we're like really emphasizing, no, it isn't, right? That T can kind of push out there. But normally, most of the time, what's going to happen, a T at the end with no connection, it just stops, okay? Isn't. No, it isn't. Question number 4. We have a few more here. The question is about the phrase Robert's opinion. So we have a TS at the end there. Robert's opinion. Is it unreleased T or dropped T? Okay, this is one reason why I don't use the term unreleased, because the T in this case is an illusion. Okay, it's an illusion. There actually is no T there. If there were a T, then it would be Robert's, right? We'd have a ts, but we don't. What we're doing, and this also can happen with the NS combination, we close into the T position, which is the same as the N position, up here on the top. Don't touch your teeth, it's not here. Okay, it's up here like I talked about in the T and D lesson and the N lesson. And the S is kind of just right here. So when we do T to S, what we're actually doing, or N to S, what we're actually doing is we're just pushing the S through that starting position. So instead of S, right, we have S, S. Notice if you listen closely, there's no T there. It's not S, right? It's I'm just slowly opening that position into the full S, and so the S gets pushed through that closed position, and it can create the illusion that there's a T there, right? But in the actual pronunciation, there is actually no T. So with Robert's opinion, we are going to get, I would put sort of the TS in spelling connected over, because it's like one sound unit now, but it's really that special S that gets pushed through instead of just a regular S. So it's Robert's opinion. Next, we have number 5. And this one has a couple questions related to it, and this is the last one. So we have it isn't a star. Okay, so first question here, the T in it is unreleased because isn't is stressed. Okay, again, it doesn't really matter about the stress. That can have an effect, but that's usually not going to be the thing. So in it, again, I could say it isn't. I could clearly enunciate that T if I wanted to, or if I had a special reason, but normally it's not going to do that. I could also do a stop, it isn't. That happens sometimes, that's perfectly fine. But because we can connect the T to the vowel in is, or isn't, very likely we're just going to do a flap D, because that's the quickest, easiest way. It isn't. Okay, it isn't. So it's not an unreleased T, it's a flap D. Isn't an Okay, so this is a good question here. So there are 2 pronunciations this person is saying, or asking. One, you can drop the T and link the N and the the schwa sound. Isn't a. It isn't a star, isn't a. That's true. You could do that. you can just go into that N position, which is the same as the T, and instead of saying isn't, you can say isn't. And we will interpret that as isn't. So you can completely drop the T there. That's one possibility, yes. The true T, which I also don't call it the true T. I think that's a stupid term, and linking T and So instead of saying isn't, you can actually do the T and say isn't, right? Actually release that T, which here it wouldn't be a strong T, it would be a weak T, but there is a T sound, yes. That's another way to do it. I could also stop the T. I could say isn't a. It isn't a star. That's possible. Okay, it can happen. There's no problem with that. Again, this is a range, but for the T sound itself, it has a lot of possibilities, and so because of that, depending on where it is in the word and depending on what's after it, we might have certain things we could do, like maybe flap, or we might have certain things that are still technically possible, like fully enunciating the T sound, even if we might not do that very likely. In this particular case, you might think, well, there's a T there, so I can flap it, right? Like isn't, da. And no, because this actually is a separate rule, okay? Where we're already in the N, so you can't flap the D. You'd have to release the N and then do the D, isn't, da. And we're not going to do that, right? That's more work. So what we're going to do instead is we have the NT plus vowel rule. And that's what this person was saying about the first pronunciation. So that's why the T disappears. I call it the NT plus vowel rule. But in the NT plus vowel rule, we actually usually drop the T instead of saying it and connect the N instead. So just because you see a T at the end doesn't necessarily mean it would connect to the next sound that's a vowel with a flap D. That happens very commonly, but it depends, right? It depends on the sounds that are before it, the sounds that are after it, which makes it sound kind of complicated. And it is complex. There's lots of things that can happen, but this is real speech. Okay, this is real speech. And you don't have to memorize all the possible things that can happen, but you have to understand that there's maybe more than one right answer depending on what we're talking about. But the reason why the is and no works is because of this a separate rule, NT plus vowel, rather than just the T in the vowel. You can ask me questions like that as well, and I can make other little videos like this talking about, the variations and all the different ways for that sound in those cases. Let me know if you have any questions, comments. Thank you guys so much for watching another English Hacks lesson, and I'll see you in the next one.